Well, welcome to another edition of the Mile High Real Estate Spotlight Podcast. And today is going to be one of those days where I'm going to ask you to think outside the box. I'm going to ask you to think a little bit differently about how traditionally we do real estate, or how traditionally we do ownership, or how traditionally we look at what we call as homeownership. Because the goal ultimately is to be able to enjoy this thing called homeownership. It is ultimately for the person who has never owned a home to be able to own a home and to be able to call it their own, and then to be able to start creating generational wealth. Well, in our world, that has been difficult over time. And especially in certain communities and communities that are out there. Today, I have Frank on. We're going to really talk a whole lot about, the way that he's doing that with a unique company called Oenify. But he's in the California Bay Area. He's soon here to move to Colorado and open up in different markets. But when I think about Northern California and the tech company, the tech world, and how expensive the homes are, I have two children who live in Northern California. They both are homeowners. They're both in their early 30s, but their path to be able to own has not been an easy one. I can say my son, who is amazing, and he works for Pixar, and he's got an incredible job, and he'll never leave Southern California. Although I keep trying to make him leave, and come hang out with me. But when you work for Disney, I guess you're going to stay where Disney wants you. But he stayed with his in-laws for 8 years, and him and his wife had to save up what would be their down payment to their home for an entirety of 8 years. In order for them to be able to purchase a home. His first home was over $800,000 when he was ready to buy his very first home in that area in which he lived. My daughter found a small home, like a fixer-upper type home, and she lived in it while she fixed it up. She finally sold it with a great profit. I think she made over $150,000 of equity, and then was able to buy, a second home, which is the one that she lives in with our grandkids. But we start thinking about, I do down payment assistance here in Colorado. And, right now, I don't think has been a better opportunity to help with some of these down payment assistance, but people still have to qualify. And Frank, I thank you for being on the show today. I thank you for having me. Being willing to say, hey, I am the CEO of a company that has a unique model that I think will work in almost any market, and it will work for people who are looking to maybe not go through the traditional way of homeownership. And so I know you're the CEO of Oenify. If you could just start out the show and just tell everybody first, I want them to know how to get a hold of you, because once they hear about this opportunity, I want you to write this stuff down now instead of trying to figure out how you're going to write it down during the show as you're writing and taking notes. So go ahead, Frank, just kind of tell us about, and then we'll just kind of get your background and how you started this.
Sure. So first of all, Brian, thanks for having me. Excited to be here. My name is Frank Rohde. I'm founder and CEO of Oenify, Ownify. And the whole idea is we turn renters into buyers, right? We Oenify you. Mm-hmm. So you can reach me at frank@ownify.com. Super simple. It's email. Or 415-549-1939, 415-549-1939 is my mobile number. And maybe the background, just for the listeners, I spent 15 years prior to founding Oenify as a CEO of a software company. And the software we built was the pricing software for a lot of the large mortgage lenders. Right. So big lenders in the US and Canada, elsewhere, use that engine to figure out, how do I set pricing on a mortgage, right? Mm-hmm. And how does that change across different markets and FICO bands, and what are the loan level price adjustments? The world you live in, Brian, you've probably mm-hmm. used that software in a roundabout way. So as part of that, we saw across, lots and lots of lenders in the data, this problem that you're describing, Brian, that, your son had, and maybe your daughter as well, which is that young people are getting squeezed out of the housing market, right? The average age of the first-time buyer is now 36, up from 33 even 2 years ago, mm-hmm. right? The average length that people save for a down payment is 5 years now nationwide, right? You described 8 years for your son. That's not unusual, right? In a more expensive market. And fully 50% of first-time buyers get help from their family, usually their parents, right? It's a gift, it's a loan, maybe it's a combination. Sometimes it's a loan disguised as a gift, right? To get around the mortgage underwriting guidelines.
Mhm.
So we looked at this and we saw this in the data and we said, wow, this is a kind of big generational and structural problem that keeps young people in particular from getting into the property market, from building wealth, right? The biggest source of wealth for the average American is their home, right? And this is a problem that the industry isn't really tackling, and this is a worthwhile problem to focus on. So I sold that company. We started Oenify almost 2 years ago now, and we've been focused on trying to figure out how do we build a better path to ownership. And I loved your intro, right? Which is, let's challenge kind of the status quo, the assumptions that we've all made, right? The mortgage is 80 years old, right? It was invented in the 1930s. And ownership has been defined in a certain way. It actually turns out there is no single definition, but we've kind of been buying houses the same way for a long time, right? Yet it's created this problem where a whole generation of first-time buyers is getting squeezed out, right? So that's what we're looking to solve.
Yeah, it's so neat, and I can hear some like philanthropy in your voice, and some, really caring about people. And I know you have a business that is tooled to help this group of borrowers, but it is so important in this day and age because we've seen over the last 80 years. I'm not 80 years old, but I've seen what my parents were able to do, and how it has created this upper middle class. And I don't think our upper middle class exists without this thing called the mortgage, or without this thing. I would say more than just the mortgage, home ownership. That ability to call something your own, that ability to say that I'm not beholden to a landlord. And I'll say this on the show all the time is, as I am a landlord and continue to, to do stuff, but, the advantages that a landlords get over folks. And here in Colorado, and I don't know what it's like, where you're at in Northern California, but we're building apartment complex after apartment complex after apartment complex, and we're pigeonholing folks into a hole that they really can't get out of in some cases. I mean, sometimes our rents are $3,000 or $4,000. I saw one the other day, $5,500, a month for a rental on an apartment. And folks are going, well, how do I save up 30% of my income, or 20% of my income, or even 10% of my income, or 10% of what I would want to buy a house with, maybe not of my income, but just saving the amount of money that I need in order to be able to put 10% down, or 5% down, or 20% down when the house is $500,000, right? Yeah. So, 10% of $500,000, that's $50,000. Where's that coming from when I'm paying $3,200 a month for rent? My paychecks are $5,000, or whatever it is that is stopping people from home ownership. And then you think of, and then we think of like crime rising, and we think of all the things that go into what happens when a group there's not that ability to call something your own. And so this unique idea you have is so cool. Can you maybe just kind of go through how it works, and what are some of the ways in which a person like myself can come and say, hey Frank, I want to buy a house. I'm throwing my hands up. I can't figure it out. What do I do when I come to you?
Yeah. So the core problem we're solving is really that down payment challenge that you're describing, Brian, right? How long does it take for you to save $50,000 for a $500,000 home, right? Or $30,000 for a $300,000 home? And so what we said is, well, can we create a structure here that lowers the down payment? And what we've done is we've created what we call fractional ownership, i.e. this notion of an on-ramp where you're buying the house that you live in one brick at a time. So the way that works is that we allow the customer, so customers come to oenify.com, right? You underwrite yourself. So there's a certain income and credit score that you need to have. And once you're qualified, we qualify you for a home budget. And let's say you qualify for, based on your income, not your savings, right? So it's purely based on how much can you afford to pay, not how much have you saved up for a down payment. So let's say we qualify you for a $400,000 budget, which buys you a starter home in, most markets.
Yeah.
Probably got to go a little bit outside of, core Denver, but so $400,000, you pay as a starting point 2%. That's the down payment that we've created. 2% down, so $8,000 down. And then you sign up for a program that's a 5-year commitment, during which you occupy the home, you become a fractional owner of the home, and you build equity over 5 years. So the way that works is that we take the home and we fractionalize it into 10,000 bricks. Now, they're not real bricks. Those bricks are shares. They're shares in an entity that owns the title to the home. So you'll be familiar with that. It's a limited liability company, an LLC, that owns title to the home. And the customer becomes a member in that LLC on day one, owning 200 shares. And through a contract, you have the ability to build equity over 5 years, roughly 13 shares, 13 bricks per month, which over 5 years gets you to roughly 1,000 bricks, or 10% of the total of 10,000 at the end of 5 years. So that's one component. While you're living in the home, you're building your pile of bricks, right? So you start with 200 and then 213 and 226 and so on. So your pile increases. There's another pile that needs to get financed, right? And that's the pile that is being sold to investors. Now, investors can be your friends and family, your community, your church, right? Folks in your environment who might have money, as well as investors that we source across the United States. So generally, those are folks who are, have more assets. They tend to be older. And really what we're enabling here is a little bit of a, having folks with money finance the first-time home buyer challenge. So while the investor finances those bricks, the Oni, as we call them, the customer, effectively rents those bricks. So pays rent on the fraction of the home that they haven't bought. So if you think back to this 2 piles of bricks, right? As the Oni, the customer, builds their pile, the pile that they have to pay rent on becomes smaller. So over the 5 years, the portion of your monthly payment that pays rent goes down, and the portion of the monthly payment that builds equity goes up. However, there is no mortgage or loan obligation. So there's no balance to pay off, which means you can stop at any point. You can go faster if you want. And you have the ability at any point during those 5 years to buy the home from the investors with a traditional mortgage. And so the golden path here, really the path we're enabling, is for someone to come in, pick the house, live in the home, build equity over 5 years. At the end of 5 years, take that 10% equity, go to a mortgage lender, right, like yourself, and say, here's my 10% equity. By the way, it was built through these shares that I bought over 5 years. It's a bona fide membership interest, right? And now I need a mortgage for the remaining 90%. So what's unique on this is that where the innovation really happens here is that the membership interest, the bricks in each home, are offered to investors under an exemption with the SEC. We've applied for a Reg A exemption, which allows any retail investor in the US to buy those bricks and hold them, which means they're effectively a security, right? That gives you the traceable membership interests and the kind of ability to hold that equity over time with all the investment benefits and tax benefits, et cetera, that you might get as an investor, and the security, quite frankly, that comes with that, right? So it's an investor value prop on one side and an on-ramp for first-time buyers on the other.
This is so amazing. And I get, as being a financial planner at some point and just thinking about the upside of all of this, as an investor, as I'm creating the bricks, and I love the analogy of using bricks of a home instead of stocks and shares, because it makes sense, right? In your mind, it says, okay, yeah, we're building this one brick at a time. Yep. I love that. So they're renting from the investors. Now, are the investors getting a monthly dividend payout? Are they waiting till the sale of the house? How does that work as far as, hey, now, yeah, I have rental property, but I'm really not I'm sure you're using property management companies and that kind of stuff to follow it, because you could have several investors on one property.
Yeah.
How does that pay out on the investment side?
Yeah. And so one of the benefits, obviously, for the investor is that you can be a fractional landlord, right? You can say, I want to buy 100 bricks in this home in Raleigh or Durham or Denver or whatever, right? And 100 bricks might cost me, $4,000 for that $400,000 home. So then I get rental income. We pay rental income on a quarterly basis, right? So that on the bricks, again, back to the Oni pays rent on those bricks. let's say you hold 100 bricks, right? You will get a rental income check once a quarter that pays the rent, right? Effectively minus expenses that are incurred and property management and all that. Now, one of the interesting things we found over the last year, we've had about $2.5 million worth of properties, so we're early, right? One of the things we found that's been really interesting is that the co-ownership mentality, right, as of the ownie living in the property, actually creates a benefit for the investor because the ownies take care of the property.
Of course,
right? They're not just tenants saying, oh, there is something wrong with the water heater. Can you come fix it, right? Like, I'm going to lean in and actually treat the property like it's my own, which to some percentage it is, right? And to an increasing percentage it is. And therefore there's a benefit built in that, the ownie takes care of the property, which then benefits the investor because it actually increases the return, through the rental yield.
And this is, Frank, as I'm thinking through, because, one of the things that I've done, like with reverse mortgages, and I'm thinking of a lady that I just did where we took out $180,000. She's the grandma, and she wanted to have, down payments for her 3 great grandkids, and so we took $40,000 each. And then those great grandkids were able to get their homes. And so while she's 72, wait until she's 92, if that's what she's going to be when she passes away, she gets to see 20 years of equity. But I think as somebody like myself with 13 grandkids, right? With 3 grandkids, 40 grand is a lot. But how could I help all 13 of my grandkids by being, a landlord? And even I'm thinking to myself, like, what if I were able to, as that fractional landlord, when I get my check every, quarter from being that landlord, maybe if I don't need it, I put that away for them to help them with something else later. I'm thinking how families and units and communities can get together with something like that. But and the other part of it is I would love to be a landlord. I don't know. I can't afford another house. But what if I could afford a fractional portion of the house in order to be able to start that income that now I can use and say, hey, if I could do it this way, now I get to start as an investor in something that is solid. And then when I think about the, now as the ownie, I have the ability to be able to get into a home. Now I get to pick the house, right? As an ownie, it's not like I'm going, you got a whole bunch of houses for me and I got to search and I'm in a neighborhood where I don't want to be, or I'm in a place, because this is the only house that's available for me to do this. I get to actually pick the house that I want if I've qualified based on that 2% and, things that I'm putting together, correct?
That's right. Yeah. So the way this works is that, we qualify the ownie and then we partner you usually with a realtor in the local market. We have realtors that have, been accredited with Oenify. And so if you're a realtor listening to this, you should come to the website, accredit yourself. And that way you get paired up with first-time buyers. So the ownie and the realtor go out, they pick the house, right? They find the house. Now we underwrite the home, obviously, because at the end of the day, we also want to make sure that this is a solid investor value prop. So what that means is we do a very thorough inspection. We negotiate hard. We're professional buyers, right? My co-founder has bought over 3,000 homes in his career. So, and we show up with a cash offer so we can drive a good deal, right? On behalf of our customer. And then on the seller side, and this is quite frankly one of the value props, right? If you're a seller and you get a cash offer, that's attractive, right? And so part of what we enable the ownie to do, especially first-time buyers, is compete in a market that makes it really tough for first-time buyers. And we've seen this, right, when we launched in Raleigh, North Carolina. That's a market where if you show up with an FHA mortgage and maybe a down payment assistance program, you're not going to win, right? The seller's going to go, okay, I've got a cash offer from someone else. I've got, 3 other buyers who might have 20% down payment, Fannie Freddie 30-year fixed, right? But with an FHA mortgage, I need another inspection, right? Maybe the close is longer, et cetera. I'm not going to bother with that, right? So part of the value prop here is also helping the first-time buyer kind of create a strong offer, right? And then have the certainty that, okay, there's a partner here with me over the next 5 years who's going to ensure that whatever home I pick, right, is gonna not, of course it can depreciate, but it's going to perform as well as it possibly can right? In terms of value appreciation or at least value preservation.
What I'm really seeing, especially here in Colorado, and I'm sure Northern California is the same way, where we have prices that are pretty pricey. We don't have a lot of inventory, and right now it's kind of it's a great time right now in January. But as interest rates lower, and if they lower even I would say even another point at some point, we're going to have this frenzy of where we're back to 3 or 4 or 5 offers on a home because there's just not enough inventory and people want to live here and people are moving here. And like you said, the first time home buyer it's almost there's no chance, especially if you're on a system where this is what you can afford. You're at the top of your game. You can't add extra money to it because nobody's giving you that extra money. If you have to add another $5,000 or $6,000, what an incredible way to be able to work on this. When I'm thinking of, like credit and that kind of stuff, you said that somebody has to qualify. Are there some of those ways that somebody, that doesn't have a 700 FICO score can still qualify because they're paying through this process where they can work on that credit? How does your credit portion work here?
Yeah, so the credit minimum credit score that we require is 680 today.
Okay.
That we may lower that in the future. But right now, if you think about there are 3 hurdles to home ownership. One is the down payment.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one we're really solving for. The other one is poor credit, right? That one we can't solve for today. And the third one is just lack of income. And that's a really tough one, right?
That one you have to work on. What about new builds?
Great question. New builds are definitely an opportunity, right? We have a couple of partnerships, and one interesting one we're working on with a builder in North Carolina, right? They're building a development. We're going to finance a couple of the properties there. And new builds are super attractive from the investor perspective as well, right? So then you're back to I can get more aggressive in terms of the price and the terms and conditions, because new builds generally perform really well from a repair maintenance perspective, cost perspective, right? Mm-hmm. Especially in the first couple of years. So that is definitely an opportunity.
So now I'm life happens, right? And so I picked this house, and I'm, in this process of that 5 years, and I get transferred from my job, or I have to move out. What happens to my portion of that ownership when I have to leave? Or am I responsible for finding somebody else as I would if I own the house, right? Because if I'm an owner, then I got to figure out how to sell it. Yeah. How does that whole process work?
So the way that works is that you can always sell your equity back to Oenify. And so we will buy back your equity at the then current market value, but we will charge you effectively a disposition fee of 2%. Okay. And so that is effectively the kind of fee that you're contributing to us then selling the home, right? Because the way the model is designed and the way it should work is that you pick the house, you live in it for 5 years, and at some point during those 5 years, or at the end of the 5 years, you buy it outright with the mortgage, or you decide, well, I'm happy with the way I'm building equity. I'm going to renew for another 5 years and keep going, right? You can do that as well. If, let's say, you want to leave, you want to buy a bigger house, or you want to move across the country for whatever reason, right? And you've built up some amount of equity, we will buy that back minus that 2% relisting fee.
Okay. Do I have to live in it?
Yes.
Okay.
So this is owner occupied.
Occupied.
Yeah.
I know that's a question people are having. Hey, I'll have one here, and I got to move, but now I get to be the fractional landlord or something at that point. Is it possible? And I don't know. Can I become an investor? With that, instead of I pay my 2% penalty, and then I just say, hey, I love this way that Oenify is doing it. Can I be a fractional investor of the of the next person as I'm looking for my new place?
Sure. Yeah. And in fact, I mean, that's a really interesting thought. We hadn't kind of encountered that, right? Let's say you say at the end of 3-4 years, you've built up 8 or 9%, and you say, you know what, I got to move across the country. I'm going to keep my equity in the home, right? And you guys find a new Oni, and that might work as well.
Yeah.
Right? And you don't have to cash it out, if you will.
Yeah, you don't have to catch it out, and maybe there's another way. I mean, I'm thinking of an instant because I work with seniors all the time, so I'm always thinking of how equity or how homes and assets are then brought down, and so many situations where I just had one last week where one of the clients that I had, she passed away. Now that one of the daughters is going to, they're figuring out how they're going to split it up because one of them wants to stay in the home. So I'm thinking in that scenario, if I get to move across country or move, even across town, I've been working on this project, but I just got an inheritance where I have a house that I could move into. There's not a real reason that need the down payment anymore, but a great reason to be able to be an investor and have income coming in. That could supplement. So I'm always thinking, I mean, you got everything figured out. There I am jumping in and doing more. I mean, this is so exciting because I'm thinking of all the, on the investment side a lot, when I'm thinking about realtors and what does a realtor have to do in order to, help somebody, not only find the home that they want, but make sure that this program, is right. Because, as I work with realtors, they're always checking, well, what's the rate and what's this? And they want to be part of that process to make sure that, the seller's interests are taken care of, whether if they're a buyer's agent, then the buyer's interests are taken care of. What are some of the things that real estate agents have to think through in this process with you guys?
So I think the main thing to understand is that as a realtor, you have a fiduciary responsibility to your client.
Yes.
Which means you have to understand the program that you're recommending, right? And if someone works with Oenify and brings their realtor to the table, or someone comes to Oenify and we partner them with a realtor, one of the things we really want to make sure is that that realtor understands exactly how our program works and represents it accurately to their client, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that the customer doesn't go in and 3 years from now say, well, you didn't tell me about the 2% relisting fee, or you didn't tell me that I couldn't move out and put a tenant in this. Nick, all the questions you're asking, right? And so that's really the most important thing, right? This is a different way of creating ownership and a different path, and we want to make sure that realtors are educated and educate their clients. So the way we do that is we have an accreditation program. And we've built our platform really around the kind of three core audiences, right? One audience is the first-time buyer, one audience is the investor, and the third audience is the realtor, right, in the transaction. So if you go to our website, it's very clear, right? Here's where you go if you're a buyer. Here's where you go if you're an investor. Here's where you go if you're a realtor. And as a realtor, you go through an accreditation program. It's educational, right? There's online content. There's usually a face-to-face session. And then there's a test. And you have to score high enough on that test to say, okay, I get what this is. I understand how it's different than a mortgage, right? I understand how to represent it to my client. And then you can get partnered with potential buyers or bring your own potential buyers, right? And at the end of the day, what's in it for the realtor is obviously it's full commission. And, that there's the likelihood or the increase in likelihood that you actually get a transaction done with your aspiring first-time buyers, right? And so a lot of the realtors we've worked with early on have themselves been younger. They understand the struggle for a first-time buyer. They have friends, they have clients, right, who've been in that same boat of making offers and not winning, or saving and saving and saving, and house prices keep running away, and so they're not getting there. So those are the types of realtors that have worked with us and have been really successful. And there's a bunch of realtor quotes and commentary and videos on our website. So if you are listening and you're a realtor, come check us out. And then let us know, especially if you're in Colorado, right, as our next market. Would love to make the connection and maybe sign you up for our launch program there.
Oh yeah, that would be amazing. And I can see the benefit is, there's, one of the things that I get from realtors a lot is, how do I, qualify my buyer, like you said, without that down payment, and then we're searching around for assistance and that kind of stuff. And, folks, as I'm looking at this, right, you would say, well, Brian, you're losing your ability to do the mortgage. I'm not here for the short term. I'm here for the long term, right? So eventually they are going to want to, get a mortgage and want to, and if I can help them follow through this process, because my goal is that you get a home, right? However we do it, so you get a home, how it works out for me in the future or the later, I'm just thinking of ways that you as even a person who's a brand new home. So that was to say, one of my down payment assistance people that got into a home that is now looking to, how do I invest? How do I, this home ownership thing is really cool. You now have the opportunity to be fractional investor in something with whatever that amount of money that you have. He gave the example of, maybe $4,000 for, however many bricks, because you can get those dividends. That's a lot easier to swallow than now. How is my income going to qualify me to invest in a whole property that can now turn into a rental, plus all the things that go along with, owning and renting and that kind of stuff. I get to get in the game, without having having this massive amount of money to be in the game when, I thought I was this person that was just, I had to build up 10 years of equity before I could ever get into this game of investing. Again, Frank, just, finding out, for people who want to be investors, who want to get into the game of, even if it's a little bit of ownership that you learn, I think of, the Airbnb folks and the other folks that you have to have a whole home to be able to take advantage. Yep. Are you finding people that don't have these substantial incomes ready to invest in it?
Absolutely, and that's the whole idea behind working through this exemption with the SEC, is to enable us to target and approach any investor out there, regardless of whether you're accredited or not. So it doesn't matter, whether you want to invest $500 or $5,000 or $50,000, right? You can invest through Oenify. So right now, if you listen to this and you go to the website, you can sign up for the investor waitlist, and the first property is about to go live, right, where you can buy bricks in that first property. And all the detail is filed with the SEC, and you can download the circular and the investment documents at the website. But the folks who have signed up and the folks who are on the wait list, a lot of them are small retail investors, right? Because again, they either love the neighborhood, or they love the concept, or they want to have exposure to real estate. They like the idea of passive income, right? And so if you want to be a landlord, but you can't be a landlord for the whole house, right? This is a way we can be a fractional landlord, and quite frankly, help solve a real problem, right? Help a first-time buyer get into a house, which is
which is huge, and I think that's what a lot of people would love to do. But in that same not only can I help a first-time home buyer without giving them money, right? Without I can actually be part of a process where now I can say this is part of my income. This is part of, it's not just me as saying, hey, this is my family I want to give, but being able, I think of communities. Now, can groups give as well? Like, could a church say, hey, we want to invest in this, fractional ownership in these properties, or community groups or something like that, where they pull some money together and say, hey, we want to get this family into a home, and we're going to help out by buying so many bricks to be able to make that happen.
Absolutely, right. So to the extent that you have either members in the church, right, or the church itself, you can absolutely do that, right?
Wow. Well, Frank, I know we're kind of on time, but I'm so excited about this. I'm so excited about you coming to Colorado. I'm excited, just the ability to be able, like I said at the beginning, to look outside the box. Before we go, I want to make sure that you tell everybody how to get a hold of you again, how to get to that website, and then maybe any some final thoughts that you may have as we close this up for today.
Sure. So Frank at Oenify.com. Oenify.com is the website. 415-549-1939 is the phone number for me. And then obviously there's a broader team here, not just myself. We'll take care of you. And if you come to the website, there's chat function and customer support and all that. And just final thought, I think don't give up, right? If you're a first-time buyer, right, whether you use Oenify, whether you use a mortgage, a down payment assistance program, right, it's hard. The market isn't easy right now, but there's a house out there for you. And so, find the resources that help you, find the partners, the realtors, right, that can help you, that can advise you, and don't give up. That's, I guess, one big piece of advice, right? And other than that, I just want to say thank you, right? Love the work you're doing and love the podcast. And so really excited that you have me.
And I hope we get this out. And I hope this is not the last time that you and I have this conversation, because when you're ready to launch and when you're ready to come to Colorado, I hope that you and I can get back on a podcast and we can do a launch, we can do a webinar, because, I just see so much potential in helping our first time home buyer crowd, because that is who calls me on a daily basis. That is the project, like you said, the first thing is, the down payment assistance. The second thing is the credit. Well, I can work on credit. I can work on credit faster than I can work on down payment assistance. I can work on credit faster than I can work on, you being able to increase income. But for the folks that are out there, and I say this at every single show, that first you can do this. Right now, we're just giving you one more avenue, one more ability, one more program or offer, I guess, that allows you to get into homeownership. So don't think that homeownership is so far away. It can be so close if there's some things that we do. So make sure that you call. The other thing is you deserve this. We live in this country that has the ability for folks like Frank to be able to put together programs that get to help the masses and get to help lots of people be able to do stuff. And then finally is, don't try to do this by yourself. Let us help you. Let the folks that do this on day in and day out, that find these programs, that find these opportunities, really be able to find what's going to be the best fit for you. You call me and we look at it and we say, this is what we can do. It might be that Oenify is the best program for you right now, because in 5 years, right away, as soon as the house closes, you own a fraction of the house. But within 5 years, you get to figure out how you own it fully. That's something that if you're sitting in your apartment, how much money are you spending on rent right now every single month that isn't allowing you to get closer and closer to home ownership? Plus, I'm pretty sure that the apartment that you're living in isn't like your first choice of, I can't wait to live here forever, right? Or this is my investment house that I move into. What's even really cooler is we talked about new build. And the ability to even think, hey, I've never dreamed of having my own, house. It's a brand new house. And if that's something that's a possibility, let's work on it. Let's partner with your real estate agents. Let's partner with Frank. Let's partner with everybody. So many opportunities, so many things. Frank, please come on again whenever you're ready and you're getting closer to being here. If you say you're here next month, we're going to do it next month. It's a couple months.
We'll be in Colorado, probably Q2 of.
Oh, that is so perfect. So right as you're getting ready, let's chop this up again. Let's talk again. Thank you for being here for another episode of our Mile High Real Estate Spotlight podcast. And we just appreciate you and the things that you're doing for the community. I love the fact, you might not love the fact that you sold your other company and, got rid of, whatever we're using to find rates and stuff. I just want to say I am so excited that you did sell it and that you are in this space and that you are helping people out. So thank you for all of
I appreciate that.
And things you do. So you guys have a great day. Look forward to talking to you soon. And don't forget, you can do this. We'll talk with you guys soon. This is Brian Arnold, and if you are listening to this part, you've just watched one of our episodes of the Mile High Real Estate Spotlight, where we've just talked to one of the best of the best. And I want to thank whichever guest that was here. They are phenomenal. They are amazing. They are the top of the top, the best of the best that are in our industry that are here with us today. And so I encourage you to please call them, pick their brains. They work for you. They enjoy working for you. They are incredibly good at it. And so I want to make sure that you give them a call. So whoever you listen to, whichever one you saw that you were there, please do that. The other thing is everyone deserves a home. Everyone deserves a home. I say that at the end of my show. You deserve it. Let us help you do it. My goal is to make sure that we see homeownership. It just sickens me to see apartment complexes continue to go up, because I know those are people who haven't been able to make the call or figure out a plan. So let us help put that plan together for you. I have some websites that allow you to do that, and I'll put those in the bottom, but please do. I am a lender. I do work in the lending space. If you do not already have somebody who's pre-qualified you, I would love to be able to have that opportunity to earn your business and qualify you. My number is 720-682-2223. That's 2223. Give me a call anytime, and I would love to be able to help you with that. We also do living trust. And so when we think about an estate, to try to avoid probate and make sure that doesn't happen. So whether it's you, if you own a home, and you should have a living trust. And I will say that everyone not just deserves it, everyone needs a living trust if they own a home. And then finally, just wanted to thank you for watching these episodes. And so please tune into more. Would love for you to see and be able to shop around. So thank you for doing that. Again, I want to make sure that you know that you can do this, you deserve this, and let us help you make it happen. You guys have an awesome, wonderful, awestruck, incredible day today.